Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to this morning's study, and we're going to continue with 1 Samuel chapter 21. But before we do, let's have a word of prayer. Dear Father in heaven, we are grateful, Lord, for the time that we have this morning, and so we invite your Spirit to speak to our hearts and minds. We thank you for the encouragement that you give us. Even living in this world of sin and suffering, we know, Lord, that we have hope, and that there's always the rainbow of promise and your grace and love manifested in so many ways, often that we don't recognize. So we just ask, Lord, that as we spend time here together, that you can draw us close to you and to one another, and that we can receive strength and insight for this day. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, so good morning, everyone. We've been studying 1 Samuel chapter 21, and we've been looking at these, what Ellen White refers to as David's first error and his second mistake. His first error has to do with the deception of Ahimelech, a high priest, when he's fleeing Saul, and his deception seems to be the problem, his lack of faith and trust in God. And then there's going to be this situation where he's going to eat the showbread. The showbread is not the error, from what I read in the Spirit of Prophecy. His error is in his deception. And then we're going to see his second mistake is when he plays the madman in front of Achish, king of Gath. And again, it's just his lack of faith and trust in God. So we know that connected to this, to the first error, with this bread, we have all of these symbols of bread being doctrine. David's going to say that, well, Ahimelech says that we don't have any common bread, we just have this holy bread, the sanctified bread. And David appears to argue that, well, the bread is in a manner common. That word manner is 1870 in Hebrew. You should be able to see that on your screen. And so there's some relationship there between that and July 18, 2020. But Ahimelech doesn't really consider this sacred bread, which is Kodesh. He doesn't really consider it to be common, but David does. Now, there's also the situation about a condition that he places. Well, this is hallowed bread, but if the young men have kept themselves at least from women. So there's this sort of condition. And David says that the vessels of the young men are holy, and the bread is in a manner common, yea, and that, of a truth, women have been kept from us about these 3 days. So we have a symbol of 3 days, and a strange expression for 3 days. It's like the day before yesterday, kind of idea. And so we haven't really figured out, who Ahimelech represents or what he represents. The women that David and his servants have been kept from for 3 days. We at least have some idea about the bread because we've created a structure with this, right? So, and that seems pretty profound in and of itself. We haven't put the waymarks of this structure here, so I'll put this here again for you to look at. And you can see that 870 and the 2455 create the inclusive count of days from November 9th, 1989 to 9/11. So that is pretty significant. Now, so David says in a manner common, so that means in a manner common, this bread is in a manner common. We have the hot bread, which I inadvertently had inverted the number of adding those two Hebrew numbers together, which are 6426. And if we take 6426 and we subtract from it, I guess I could have done it that way, 252, we get Capricar's constant. And the fact that I had inadvertently inverted the number is significant because of that connection. Now, we've done that before. Hebrew reads from right to left, so I just read the number backwards, let's say. But it gave us this November 18th, 2018 date. And that's significant because it's going to be 5 days from October 13th, 2018, and the 5 loaves of bread can represent 5 days. Plus, we have from no common bread, that phrase, H369 is no common, of course, 2455, and Alachem 3899, and it gives us a period of 16 years and 390 days, which is 6,234 days. The same number we get if we take the word day and double it, and we did this in the other chart. So that gave us October 6, 2018, counting from 9/11. And so that's 12 days from that October 18th, 2018 date, the 12 days representing the 12 loaves of bread, or the 12 loaves of bread representing the 12 days, and the 5 that are going to be taken by David, right? So this seems to me pretty profound in that connection. Now we have holy bread, that is Kodesh, Lachim, and that's going to give us 10,843 days, which brings us to July 18, 2019, from November 9th, 1989, which is 366 days before July 18, 2020. And that November 9th, 2019 date, that of course is part of our lines. There's 252 days. So that 252 that I subtracted from the other one to get the Capricorn's constant is already in this line. And then I can invert 1104 days to be 411. If I add that to 252, I get 663, which is an inversion of 366. So it just shows that there's inversions allowed here in this line. And there may be other ones as we go through these lines. So sometimes in a line, we'll get a pattern of symbols or analytical aspects that show up in that. Now, Kelly made a note that they show the fingerprint of Palmoni. Is that the sum of the matter, which I think is meant to be a pun? Yes. So we have all of these. We have a line that's constructed that helps explain and expand the line of 1 Samuel 20, which gave us some of this same history. So this is just a repeat and enlarge of that line, giving us more detail about some of the errors that we have made. And so we need to understand what these errors are. And the question is, are these errors related to time setting itself, to the conclusions that we drew, or is it to some fault that is moral fault that existed within the movement within us as we moved through this history? Now we're saying that the first error relates to like the first angel's message in this line. So we believe that this line is actually part of a whole line. That is 1 Samuel chapter 21 is an entire line in which there are 2 errors, but we haven't put his second mistake on a line yet. Okay, so we keep coming back to this one. I keep trying to move forward, but I have all these loose threads in the first 9 verses of 1 Samuel 21. And we don't have Doeg on this line yet, but I think there's going to be some connection as we start to look, because that is in verse 8 and 9, I believe. No, it's going to be in verse 7, and then in 8 and 9 we're going to have David asking for a spear or a sword, and he's going to get the sword of Goliath, right? So we still haven't addressed that part. Okay. Now, I do want to address a couple of things so one is, while I was going for my walk this morning, I was thinking about the Hebrew number 802. So let's go here, look at passages again. So the Hebrew number 802 there for women. The thing about that number is it's 2 years and 72 days. as long as you don't have a leap year in one of those 2 years. So it's 730 plus 72. Now, we had addressed, let me think here. It was in one of my videos. I've been looking at comments on videos and commenting on them. Okay, so it was yesterday's video. We made a comment about the number 108. Now, I know there's 108 days from Trump becoming president to this new Pope Leo the 14th. And let me see here. But I can't remember what we talked about yesterday in that video, whether we talked about that as with 108. Okay, so we were talking about the Pope there, dealing with 108 days, the short space. But I don't think we talked about it in this line. So let's just get back to 802. Okay, so the number 802 is a year plus 72 days, right? Or 2 years plus 72 days. If we count from November 9th we count 2 years and 72 days. What date do we come to? Anybody know?
Ask it again.
For November 9th, and we count 2 years and 72 days. What date do we come to? Just in normal years when there's no leap year.
Yeah, sorry, my lag cut out there. So you said November 9 something?
Count 72 days. Iran says January 26th from November 9th.
Which November 9th are you talking about?
If you just count from a November 9th to 72 days without a leap year, what date do you come to? Yeah, if you have a leap year in there, you're going to have a different date, right? So that is, we're counting 2 years. So if we just count 72 days, it doesn't really matter. But if we start on November 9th and we count 72 days, what date do we come to?
So 9 plus 72. You're talking December 25th?
No, because that would be...
Iran says January 20.
Yeah, January 20, okay? Yeah, because you take off 61 from 72. You get 11, right? And then you add the 11 to the 9, you get 20. That's a simple way of doing it. At least that's how I do it. Yeah. So it is kind of interesting that we have this word woman, and that if we count from November 9th, depending where we count, so it depends on what year, because if there's a leap year in there, it's going to bring us to January 19th, but it could be an exclusive count because there's 730 days in 2 years and 731 if there's a leap year. Yep.
It matters where it is. It's similar to the simplest argument I have for the line starting with Bush is the judgment began in 1844. That's true. Specifically, it began on October 22nd, 1844.
Yeah.
The time of the end for our time began in 1989. So the argument I'm hearing is that Reagan was president in 1989, but specifically November 9, 11/9, the rebirth of 9/11. I don't know how, that's where the line starts. That's what number 1 is. Anyway, that's my simple logic to the whole thing, and I'm looking forward to an answer.
Right. So
I am trying to engage, but just a little bit.
Yeah. So
it frustrates the heck out of me.
Okay, I can't hear you. What you said.
Okay, I was saying that having a conversation with people that are convinced that the line of presidents begins with Reagan rather than Bush has been disheartening. So the simplest thing is
okay, yeah. So when we're talking with other people are going to have all kinds of views. I mean, I saw an email that Angela forwarded to me, and I just don't think that it makes much sense to argue with somebody who's entrenched in an ideology that there's no evidence that you could bring that can convince them otherwise. Right? That's just
Yes.
right.
And that was the water that I was testing, and came back disappointed. So, amen.
Yeah.
Amen to what you said. But I had to test.
Yeah, people need to be open to the truth if we're going to share with them. If they're closed, it's not going to be profitable. But yeah, so we have this November 9th. Now, of course, we know that if we count from November 9th, we're going to end up with, if we do just a cardinal count, we'll get January 20th. So that means there's some connection between, now this woman, this is just the Hebrew word for women, 802. So that's 730 plus 72, right? If we're going to break it down, 2 years and 72 days. Now, of course, if there's a leap year in there, it'd be 2 years and 71 days, but we can still just take it as a symbol of that. Now, they have been kept from women, right? So what does that mean? So what is this woman? Could women represent an interpretation of prophecy, the Protestant interpretation of prophecy? Not just like a church, but...
Yes.
Okay.
It's a possibility. It's one to consider.
So I think that does make sense, that we can use that argument that's what's happening. Now, if November...
Yeah. Sorry for the delay. Is there some other instance where women represents the word rather than just God's body of people?
No.
So why are we thinking? Why are you thinking women represent a message?
Well, women represent a church, and I'm just saying that's what connected with women are the daughters of the papacy, the Protestants. So we've argued that we have doctrine here, right? Bread representing doctrine. Kelly, I can't hear you, and you're interrupting me all the time when I'm talking.
Yeah.
So we have bread representing doctrine, right? And now we have that in order to eat this bread, you have to be kept from women, right? So one of the things that we've argued in this movement is that we've had a group within this movement that has been using Protestant interpretation unwittingly, but has been, right? That is, they've had presumptions or suppositions or presuppositions that they have brought into the argument that really have no place in this discussion. So that's what we would say. Now, Angela's connecting us to Ezra chapter 10, dealing with the marriage to these wives, these strange wives, right? So there's going to be this divorcement, and we've argued that the divorcement from the strange wives has already occurred. It's going to begin on the first day of the 10th month and ends on the first day of the first month. And we've already had in previous chapter dealing with the first day of the first month. So there's a consistency, a logical consistency on how we've been looking at these lines, what they're representing. So I would say that to say that they have to have been kept from women has to do with understanding doctrine without the Protestant interpretation. Any thoughts on that?
And it is a mystery to me. The way of a man with a maid is one of the mysteries, and the way of Christ with his church is a mystery. Okay. So I'm not sure if we can answer every question, but good question.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So we have this this idea that women and the question, the connection that I'm making there is that we're going to see.
Can you, Brother Theodore? Can you quote in what you said about the church for the women.
Yeah, I was just doing that. Okay, so we have the women represent the Protestant interpretation of doctrine. And that is going to come from a connection between November 9th and January 20th, in which they're going to predict that Colin's going to make a prediction. He's going to use that connection with Biden becoming president and so forth, saying that Biden's the 7th. The point is, it's a false interpretation with Protestant understanding in connecting November 9th and January 20th. That is, women is 802. It connects November 9th and January 20th. And a Protestant interpretation of prophecy was used to interpret the Trump prediction that Colin did. So Colin is going to be using women, right? He's not going to be kept free from women.
I just want to make sure.
Okay,
I just want to make sure what I was hearing.
Okay, Kelly.
I was excuse me. I was saying, explain that a little more. What you're saying by Colin using women.
Okay. Yeah.
Hold on. And I was listening to the December 25th presentation the other day actually. So it's interesting. Please go on.
So Colin is going to make this connection between Trump's election. Let me see if I can find it. For some reason this is not okay. Let's do it this way. Okay, so I'm going to go to this chart here. I'll find it. I just haven't found it yet on the chart. I haven't searched yet. Okay, so this is basically Trump wins the election November 9th, 2016. I don't know if you can see this very well. I'll try to zoom in a bit. Now, the main thing is that Colin's going to go back to November 3rd of 2020 when Biden is elected. And then he's going to connect, but Biden's going to be inaugurated January 20th, 2021. And that's going to be 1,533 days after Trump is elected. Now, the problem is not the line. The problem is not the dates. The problem is the interpretation that's made in Colin's prediction, right? So he's going to make a prediction about Trump in the midterm elections that Trump's going to end up coming into power, right? That was his prediction back in 2022, I believe is when he makes that prediction, is in 2022. So he's going to make this prediction based upon the past. He's going to have this 65 days from November 3rd election to the siege of Washington. He's going to divide it as 19 and 46. And then he's going to say that it's the 14th, the 46th president is Biden. It's going to switch to the 19th president, Republican president again. Of course, Trump is going to end up being the 47th and the 20th, but that doesn't really matter to Colin. And he's not going to put the exact dates there, but we end up with the dates. So we put the midterm election November 8th. We count the 65 days to January 11th. And we do an analysis of it. But what he does is he connects November 9th to January 20th. But he does it connected to women. That is, he is saying the same thing as the Protestants. He's making a lot of the same arguments. We still see this happening within the movement. Within Adventism, people are making all kinds of arguments about the coming Sunday law and the role of Trump and the role of this new pope. But it's not how we study, right? It's a mixture of how we study. Does that make sense? That is women. That's the Protestant. We have to be free. That is the word that's used. We have to be.
Can you make that smaller? Can you make that, Dr. Theodore? Can you make that smaller? That chart.
You mean bigger?
No, smaller.
like that?
Okay. All right.
Because you wanted to see the whole thing?
Yeah, I want to see the whole thing.
Yeah, so this is Isaiah 3:12. As for my people, children are their oppressors, and women rule over them. O my people, they which lead thee cause thee to err and destroy the way of thy paths. Right. So that's what we've been arguing. And David is going to be free from women. Okay, that's what he's going to claim. And that's going to be the condition in order to eat this bread. And so this is a special situation. Now, David represents the leadership of Christ in this movement. So we can then argue that the reason why the word woman fits into these lines is simply it demonstrates that connection between November 9th and January 20th that is misused by Colin. Okay? Does that seem fair? And the problem isn't the dates. The problem is his interpretation of the dates.
That would seem to be logical.
Okay. Because that was the thing that was bothering me is like, what does it mean to be kept from women?
Yeah, I missed that on what Colin is saying on women.
He's not saying anything on women. He's using Protestant interpretation, which is represented by women.
So William Miller's rule is the one that came to mind with that two-letter word of. Let every word have its proper bearing. So he doesn't address women in that verse or whatever context?
No, it's not about women. It's about what women symbolize in this passage in 1 Samuel 21.
Right, that was basically my question. It's in the passage, but it's not addressed. That word does not have its proper bearing.
So all it is that David's supposed to be kept from women, and the servants with him are to be kept from women in order to eat this bread, this holy bread that David says is in a manner common, though Ahimelech says it's holy. So David's going to get 5 of these loaves, which represents 5 days, and that's all I'm saying is that women is representing what he has to be kept from, and what he needs to be kept from is this Protestant interpretation. Right? This has been the real big issue within the movement. Is we have people claiming to be using Miller's rules, but they're not. It's a mixture, right? So that to me makes sense, and it's just So I understand that the symbol of women, 802 is the Hebrew number, is a date which we can count from November 9th. You count 802 days, and you get January 20th. And Colin in his line connects November 9th when Trump is elected to January 20th when Biden is inaugurated. Of course, that's more than 2 years, but it's just as a symbol, 802, the Hebrew number, represents the connection between November 9th and January 20th. And Colin is the one who uses that connection to make a false prediction regarding Trump, right? So this is what has happened in this movement. We have in this history this conflict between our understanding of how to use, like how we use dates, and how some people in the movement are using dates. So we're going to have this.
It also conflicts with. What was I saying earlier about unless we can agree on the foundations of Seventh-day Adventists, and then we'll never get to the same conclusion. So, didn't we once in the beginning? How did we? In 2015, people were saying Trump would be elected. Now, based on what? And that is based on Bush being the first. Trump was the fifth, and so
Daniel, the fourth shall be richer than they all.
Yeah. So
what changed? What changed? That's That's a bugger.
Personal feelings.
Just feeling.
Just personal feelings, personal conflicts. That's the only thing that changed.
That just leaves me amazed.
One-upmanship.
Sorry, Angela, go ahead.
On the former diagram you had there, the 1519 days is actually 7 times 217 weeks. I think you had 31 weeks.
On which one?
The diagram you had up before you put this one back up.
Collins diagram?
Was that Collins?
Yeah, this diagram here.
Yeah, because he's got 7 times 31, and I guess he's thinking of the week of Christ, but it's actually 7 times 217. And I thought I saw another error in there too. November 8th for the midterms, 27th day of the 3rd month. Isn't that the 8th month?
Yeah, so this isn't a mistake. This is 217 weeks, right? So 217 is 7 times 31 weeks.
Oh, okay. All right, that makes sense.
Or 217 weeks. How's that? What card?
So from midnight. Yeah.
Yeah. Now that's my analysis, but so I added details or analysis to Collins' chart. So Collins going to have the 1,533 days from Trump winning the election in 2016 to Biden's inauguration, which is 219 weeks. Right? Then there's 14 days or 2 weeks from the siege of Washington to Biden's inauguration. So that's where you get the 217 weeks. And then we have from Trump's election to the midterms is 219 French Republican weeks, because their weeks are 10 days each, 2,190 days. So right, you can see that 219 shows up again and again. And then there's a bunch of other analysis, but 780 days from this point, 781, 718, just different spans of time that all relate to July 18th. So what I did is I took an analysis of Collins' chart, added these dates, which he didn't really want to put in there. He didn't want to put December 24th and January 11th to make his mirror complete. And then I analyzed all of those dates. The problem that Colin had was his conclusion that he's going to draw, right? So the mistake people make is they use dates and numbers, but they don't use Miller's rules to interpret them, right? Because the dates, people can recognize spans of time. This date is connected to that, and it's got the symbol. But then how do you interpret it? How do you know what it means? And that's where we use line upon line in understanding those things. Now, when it comes to Revelation 17, we worked through it very methodically and prayerfully, and we came to the conclusion based upon what we understood. And Kelly posted that picture there of the lines. So we understood that there are 7 presidents or 7 kings of Medo-Persia, the first 7 kings, and we compared them. Initially, we had compared them to like the kings of Judah and so forth, right? We actually did not have 7 presidents. We didn't really connect them to 7 presidents. That was not done. What we had done is we had taken Daniel 11 verses 1 to 3, and we had just connected the first American presidents from the time of the end with the first 4 or 5, I guess, Persian kings, right? So we started with Cyrus is going to be lined up with Bush the first, right? So there's no way that we can have Trump being Xerxes if we have Cyrus lined up any other way, right? So if we had Cyrus lined up with Reagan, that wouldn't work. So we understood that they're lined up that way. And we understood that Cyrus is the first king of Persia. So that means we had to have Bush the first as the first president from the time of the end. So we lined up the time of the end with the 7 decrees, which we get parallel to Millerite history, and we're in the repeat of Millerite history. So we're going to start there, right? We're going to start with those Persian kings. Colin made the error of starting to count from Reagan as one instead of not counting him as he lined them up. So we never count. Can I screen share what? Kelly, what are you asking me to screen share?
I sent 2 photos or screenshots of your lines that helped me understand it quite a bit.
Okay, I can just put them here.
Yeah.
Just like this.
When you talk about them, they help me quite a bit.
Yeah, so if you look here, like for instance, the 7 kings, see how we have Manasseh, Ammon, Josiah, Jehoahaz, Jehoiakim, Jehoiakim, Zedekiah. Those are the last 7 kings of Judah. We line those up with the first kings of Persia, right? Notice we got Cyrus in there. We don't have, Darius the Mede, right? And Bush first is lined up with Cyrus. So Trump is lined up with Xerxes, which means now this I completed and added Biden. There's Nero and stuff underneath here as well, Vespasian and so forth. Augustus is the first. And we have Odilio doing things like counting Julius Caesar as the first Roman emperor, but Augustus is, right? Same kind of mistake. You have, and the same sort of parallel. You have Darius the Mede and Cyrus sort of together. You have Reagan and Bush the first sort of together, and Julius Caesar and Augustus sort of together. But if you're going to count as the first, you have to count Cyrus, you have to count George Bush Sr., and you have to count Augustus as the firsts, right? You can't do it any other way. In this here, where we have these placeholders, Artabanus is a placeholder, Biden is a placeholder. He's not really the president of the United States because his mind isn't there. And then you have 3 emperors here in this 1 year, right? After Nero. Nero lines up with Trump as well. And so that's why I have 666. So you have 3 that are the 6th. And then we have Vespasian as the 7th, right? And then here I just have a question mark. Well, now we know this is Trump, right? So I just had never completed this, right? And then we also have, the first kings of northern Israel in this chart. So there is no way that we can have what was established in this movement, which is logically still consistent. There's no contradictions. Trump is going to be the 5th and the 7th, right? He's also going to be the 45th and the 47th, right? He's not the 46th again, because if we counted him that way, then he would never have been the 45th, right? Because it's Grover Cleveland who serves 2 terms that are separated. Can't remember. I always get these names mixed up. I don't know my American presidents too well. But, right, and we have the same, So anyway, it's just consistent. And then we say that he continues a short space. And then when he continues a short space, then the 8th appears. So Trump is president for 108 days before we get the 8th. So the 8th has to be the beast that was and is not, and yet is, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit. It has to be that. It has to be the papal beast. It can't be the United States. The United States is not the beast that was and is not. Okay, Kelly asks, why can something be so simple and not yet seen? Well, simply, if your eyes are closed because of prejudice and hatred, then you're not going to be able to see something. And we understand the prejudice and hatred, right? It's not just an intellectual disagreement. There's personal feelings involved. People have emotions that get in their way, in any situation if we're not open to truth. So, and those kinds of things, those kinds of statements that I just made, those can really aggravate people. They can anger people. But we have to be careful about emotions, right? if the thoughts are correct, the feelings will be correct. So we have to start with our thoughts, and our thoughts obviously need to be God's thoughts. They have to come from His Word, from studying His Word. And, so this is what was established regarding the lines. So now to move them and to say that Reagan is number one would mean we're not dealing with the 7 kings of Persia parallel to the 7 presidents. We're just using some other line, some other count. But we have no basis for counting that way, especially if we count from the time of the end.
Well, this is the count that the movement, I suppose, ascribed to, was in 2015-16 predicting Trump to be the president. So if we abandon that, what happens to 2016 and all those predictions?
Well, that's part of the problem.
Yeah, it's just another one of those, glitches.
Yeah, and it was a mistake that Colin just made, and I'm not sure why he couldn't see it. I mean, initially, because I don't think there was necessarily feelings involved at that time, but other people's feelings were involved. That in that meeting on December 25th, that sort of shut me down. And Colin said he was reacting to what he thought, because he thought I was there for the whole study, right? And he thought my question was, I don't know, rude or something. I don't know. I was just asking him a sincere question, but it created a lot of problems. And there was some,
Are you talking about December 25th study?
Yeah.
Well,
and there were some other hurt feelings. Yeah.
I do remember, like I said, I was listening to it the other day. Colin asking, saying your name several times, and you didn't reply because you weren't there. And then when you did tune in your mic or whatever, you could hear you were busy doing something. Okay. So he thought you weren't listening, or he thought you were there when you weren't?
Yeah, I don't know about turning on my mic, because as soon as I came in just as he was presenting some stuff, and I responded right away.
Okay, so you weren't there from the beginning, then had to do something.
Oh, I was asleep.
Okay.
Because I did meetings like really like late at night, because we were doing meetings.
I do that with our meetings as well. So
Yeah, so I had to have a quick nap before his meeting, because I just finished a meeting. I was exhausted. It was translated from Spanish or into Spanish, and so when I came in, I had missed. But I saw right away that he had some insight into some things that we needed to look at, and so I was just curious about how he was answering some of the things that I saw, and he was not receptive. And then of course, that people got upset with me asking these questions.
Okay, so I'll say it here. The opportunity to be misunderstood is preeminent or first among social media, short text messages, even video.
Well, if you can't see somebody, I mean, that's why I dislike the fact that I can't see any of you people. Because I can't.
Seeing helps. Seeing helps. But remember, I was telling you about that friend of mine, 45, 50 years. Yeah. And just over a text message thinking, it's over. And then we talked on the phone last night, and it's like, we are best friends forever.
Yeah. No, and I mean, and I have the most difficult time in friendships to begin with, right? So the fact that that you have all this social media, and I don't know how to do all those little niceties, right? So I can be quite rude and a bit of a jerk. So it's just a reality. I don't know what to do about it. I don't understand social cues, but it's even more difficult on social media.
Don't stir this old man up, because I think I can probably beat you in those categories. Miserable, irritable, and discontent.
Well, I'm always happy, and I'm never mad at anyone.
Yeah. No, you're not rude.
Well, it comes across as rude.
How come? What do you mean?
Because I'm just straightforward. I don't try to, I don't play all I don't know how to do the things you're supposed to do to smooth it down, Don't know how to.
Yeah, okay. No foreshadowing. It's just, here's the story, and brunt would be the word.
Blunt.
Or you're not brunt, because it's not brunt. To me is kind of a negative word. It's to the point. Like, don't waste time.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
but it's not even really about time to me. It's just I don't understand all this other stuff. It seems to me pretension. It seems to me like dishonest, right? To sort of play those games. I just can't do it. I have to just be who I am. But I create these problems. I realize it. I try not.
Like who you are. We like who you are, Theodore. So.
Well, thanks. But it doesn't really matter to me, right? Whether people like me or not.
Oh, come on.
No, it doesn't.
I get it. I get it. I was just trying to,
Yeah. What matters to me is whether something is true or not. And that can be annoying to people.
Well, it's true. We do like you.
Okay. Well, thanks.
There you go.
But so when we're dealing with this whole issue, we can see that this women is represented. It's the number 802. That number really bothered me. So while I was walking, I was thinking about it and praying about it. What does this 802 mean? And then I just did the math in my head. I realized, well, that would be November 9th to January 20th, 72 days. Right. So it's actually 2 years and 72 days. So, and then that connects to Colin's prediction, which it's the correct chronology. There is a connection between January 20th and November 9th. But how we interpret that, are we going to use Miller's rules? That is, now we have this bread. So the main thing here that I've been trying to address in this, what I think is being shown us in 1 Samuel 21, is this bread. Bread refers to doctrine. And in order to eat this bread, they have to be kept from women. Have they been kept from women? Now, they have to be kept from women for 3 days, right? Because all of us have been affected by women, right? That is false doctrine, the Protestant churches, right? But in order to be kept from women, we have this symbol of 3 days. Now, the 3 days is a really important symbol because we can connect it to the time that Christ, from when he's crucified to when he's resurrected. We have 3 days in the story of Joseph with the butler and the baker's dreams. We have 3 days in the story of Ezra, right? 3 times we have actually periods of 3 days. They create these chiasms and these structures. So we can say that these 3 days have to do with an understanding of these prophecies. So we have to be kept from women for 3 days in order to eat this bread. Now, this bread is meant only for priests, but David is going to be allowed to eat this bread. Now, we can say that there's a fault with David, an error, because there's going to be deception involved. And the question is, how does that relate to what's happening, right? Do we take that moral aspect into this story and say that that has something to do, that is teaching us about something we have done wrong, right? Is there a lack of faith and trust in God that has caused this situation, right? Now, I can say personally, definitely there's a moral fault on my part in how I've related to the situation within the movement, right? So I understand, the part that I have to play. And if we're going to come to the upper room, if God is going to unite people who have been fighting amongst themselves, we have to be able to recognize the things that we have done wrong, right? So it doesn't help recognizing what somebody else has done wrong. Now, the other word that we have, so now on this chart, I just want to note that we have this span of 6,234 days, and we've come to it 2 different ways, right? no common bread adds up to this period of time, which is 16 years and 390 days, or 6,234 days. And we also could just simply multiply or double the word yom, 3117, and we also get 6234, right? So it's simple. 31 times 2 is 62, and 17 times 2 is 34. So you get 6234. Now, this word kept, if we look at it here, now we have done some inversions of numbers, right? So of a truth, we have been kept from women. Now, this number is 6113. Now, if I inverted 6113, I would get 3116. And if I doubled that, I would get 6232. I would be 2 days short of that. Now, is that significant? So could I say that there's a relationship between what it means to be kept? And if we just think of it, it is something in between. So the word itself means to enclose or to hold back, right? To shut, stayed, able, detained, retained, closed, keep, recover, rein, restrain, slack, withhold. Okay. The first time it's mentioned in the Bible is interesting. It's in Deuteronomy 11. I guess it's not the first time. It's the second time because it's in Numbers as well. Numbers 16:48. But it is in Deuteronomy 11:17. And what's the significance of that symbol 11:17? And this is shutting up the heavens, right? To shut up the heaven. And then the Lord's wrath be kindled against you, and he shut up the heaven that there be no rain. So could this being kept from women, being kept from this false teaching, but also 1117, the number 1117 is the 187th prime number, and it's also 11 times 17 is 187. It's the only number that does that. So in order to be kept from women, the thing that keeps us from women is this the understanding of July 18 and the symbol.
What word did you say was 1117?
It's not a word. This word is used. It's the word kept.
Yeah, right.
Translated as shut up here in Deuteronomy 11:17.
In other words, keep my mouth shut.
That's okay.
That's okay. Okay.
You can talk.
And shut up from rain. Shut up from rain.
I was going to say, could this be a shut door as well?
Well, maybe, but the idea here is that they need to be kept from women. So that is that they're shut up from women, the Protestant method. And if we just look at this word shut up, it can refer to the time from 11/9 that we have, or 9/11/2001 to October 6, 2018. So in October 6, 2018, that's part of that structure we have already. So it's 6232 instead of 6234. So it's just 2 days short. So it's sort of enclosed within that span of time. That span of time is going to bring us to the 12 days that end with October 18th. And those 12 days represent the loaves, the 12 loaves. And David's going to take 5 of those loaves. So the idea of, let's look at it again. So here we have, I'm going to do it this way and borrow this line. Okay, I'm going to put this line under here. Okay, here's how I'm envisioning enclosed or kept. So we have this span of time. This span of time is going to be I'm going to take the word kept, which is 6113. So I'm going to do this. I know it's going to seem weird. So I'm going to take 6113 and I'm going to invert it to be 3116. And then I'm going to multiply it by 2, which would equal 6232 days. Okay, so what I've done is I've combined a few different. Okay, so that is going to be what I'm doing. I'm taking H, I'll do it as H, 6113. I'm inverting it. I get this number, which if I multiply is 2 days short of that span of time. And all right, so I got this, which is smaller, right? It's a smaller span of time. There's 1 day on either side. So it means enclosed, right? Or shut up. So this is what it means to be kept from women. I know it's rather convoluted in a sense. Now, we also connect this to is in Deuteronomy 11, verse 17, right? So 11:17 we know connects to, right? And then we have the 7 days. So in this story, we have the 12 loaves of bread. So we have to be kept from women for 3 days in order to take of this bread. There's 12 loaves of bread. David's going to take 5 of them. The loaves of bread represent the 12 days. The 12 days lead us to that presentation on October 18th, 2018, where I'm going to present the 395 days that I had discovered 5 days previously. So that 5 loaves of bread represents those 5 days, taken from among the 12 days, right? So it's just connecting that. And then we have the hot bread, right? And the hot bread is 2527 plus 3899. That is, we added it together. We got 6426, which if we subtract Capricar's constant, we'll get 252. If we subtract 252, we get Capricar's constant, which allows us to have different iterations of numbers. In this case, it's just purely an inversion. That number of days is 6246 days to October 18th from 9/11. So we have all of these different inversions and spans of time that illustrate this history. So to be kept from women is just from the Protestant interpretation. And to be kept from women, we're clinging to the Palmanized symbolic use of numbers in connection with July 18th. That's part of what we're doing. But we also have to be kept from women. That is from the Protestant way of looking at things. So that's how we can have this correct understanding. Now, within the movement, in this history, this is a history that's earlier, though. Remember, this is not the history that's later on. Right? This is the first era of David that we're studying here. And it's going to, so when we look at the second era, it's going to address the history that's coming later on in our movement. But the reason why we get to the problems that we do later has to do with this history. Because in this history, we're going to have November 9th, 2019 is a separation that occurs between two groups, right? And those that, there's going to be a group of people that separated out, and that group is going to be tested. And we're going to see that in the story, even though Doeg is mentioned in the first 9 verses. Probably here I should put this as verses 1 to 7. You know, technically, I think that it is 1 to, let me see, 1 to 7 or 1 to 6. Because Doeg, even though he shows up at that time, I'll just leave it as 9, but for now, it's going to be in the second era when David goes to the Achish, king of Gath, right? Well, it's actually going to be in chapter 22 when Doeg is going to speak. So I'm not really sure how to deal with Doeg yet, because we haven't got to 22. So maybe when we get to 22, that's where it's going to happen. So it's not even going to be addressed in this first. Yeah, so it's going to be verse 7. So this would be really verses 1 to 6 that we have on this line. When we deal with 7 to 9, 21 verse 7 to 9, and maybe it's even just verse 7, and I think we almost have to take this like 21:8 and 21:9. They're not really. I mean, he's getting this sword, and I'm not sure how to address that. But we haven't had any of those symbols on this line yet. Okay, so yeah, so Kelly wants to have that quote regarding the mistake. Yeah. So this is in. It is in Signs of the Times, August 31st, 1888. The first error of David was his manifest distrust of God at Nob. And his second mistake was his deception before Achish. Okay. So the first one's a distrust. The next one is a deception. She doesn't focus upon the deception so much. Yeah. So there you have the quote there, Kelly. Okay. And it's in Patriarchs and Prophets. I don't understand your other comment. But anyway, so we got, it's in Patriarchs and Prophets as well. Basically, just trying to see. The first error of David in Patriarchs and Prophets was his distrust of God at Nob, and his second mistake was his deception before Achish. David had displayed noble traits of character, and his moral worth had won him favor with the people. But as trial came upon him, his faith was shaken, and human weakness appeared. He saw in every man a spy and a betrayer. In a great emergency, David had looked up to God with a steady eye of faith and had vanquished the Philistine giant. He believed in God. He went in his name. But as he had been hunted and persecuted, perplexity and distress had nearly hidden his heavenly Father from his sight. Right? So it's a little bit different than the one in Signs of the Times.
The experience of nearly, certainly would 144,000, they will think that they are lost, nearly.
Nearly? Where's that?
Well, it isn't. But the experience of the 144,000 is the experience of Christ dying the death of the wicked, thinking that they deserve to die even, but they don't die.
Okay, I just don't understand what's nearly. What's that?
I guess they're ready to die. They're ready to die. They believe that there may be something in them that, like, when we talk about assurance, like we don't have
you're
any.
Saying they're nearly ready to die? I'm not. I just don't.
Okay.
I'm not catching what you're saying. Where you don't see nearly anywhere? You're just using the word?
No. They're so near to be willing to die that they.
Well, they are willing to die. It's not near willing to die.
True.
They're not going to die, but
they don't die. Yeah. I guess that's what I'm saying. They're ready to die, but they don't die. They're nearly. Like they're so near, they're on a razor edge. Yeah. They will die if that's what's required.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Now here in Signs of the Time, I'm going to read this part. This is a couple of paragraphs on. David ought not to have distrusted God for one moment. Wherever the children of God make a failure, it is due to their lack of faith. When shadows encompass the soul, when we want light and guidance, we must look up. There is light beyond the darkness. We must learn to trust our Heavenly Father and not allow the soul to be defiled with the sin of unbelief. In trying to save ourselves, we do not commit the keeping of our souls to God as unto a faithful Creator. We do not expect Him to work for us, but frantically beat about in our own finite strength to break through some wall of difficulty, which alone God can remove for us. Man is nothing without God. The example of the good and noble men of sacred history is to be imitated by us only where they followed the footsteps of the Lord. When man relies implicitly upon God, he will be true to himself, and he can hope and rejoice in the God of his salvation, though every friend of earth becomes a foe. Okay. So I guess the main point, like to try to sum up, we've really just addressed the symbol of the Hebrew number women, what women represent, and how it fits into the lines. That it's just a symbol of November 9th to December or to January 20th. So November 9th to January 20th is there's an interpretation. We'll call it a Protestant interpretation because that's how we understood it back when we started studying the separation of the strange wives. So they have to be kept from women for 3 days. Now, the 3 days can symbolize the 3 dates of November 9th, July 18th, and December 25th, 2021. But we put the word kept, we put it here in this span of time, 6,232 days. So it's just 2 days short of that. Maybe it fits somewhere else. In that case, it would be 16 years and 388 days, right? So nearly 17. Well, it's over 17 years. So it's 17 years and 23 days. So I don't know. Maybe it fits somewhere in the line. And Kelly put the quote about the bird in the cage that Ellen White uses. The ministry of healing. So,
in the full light of day and in the hearing of the music of other voices, the caged bird will not sing the song that his master seeks to teach him. He learns a snatch of this, a trill of that, but never a separate and entire melody. But the master covers the cage and places it where the bird will listen to the one song he is to sing. In the dark, he tries and he tries again to sing that song until it is learned, and he breaks forth in perfect melody. Then the bird is brought forth, and ever after he can sing that song in the light.
Mm-hmm.
Thus God deals with his children. He has a song to teach us. And when we have learned it, amid the shadows of affliction, we can sing it ever afterward. Now that's really, really good stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, it's very, very powerful. And to understand, the sorrows that we experience, the trials that we experience, that there's a purpose in them, right? And we can't.
Yes, I was going to say that gives it meaning, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Purpose, yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, if we could just see, we have to trust that God has a purpose, right? But we should be able to see it from the past, from our past experiences. But often we forget. Now, as far as what's happened in the movement, and I know, I'm moving away from, this emotional thing, which it is, but it's a very powerful thing to just recognize that God has given us light in this movement. And it can be a bit discouraging that other people don't see the light. But all we can do is see the light and respond. We can't really do anything about anyone else's experience. But the fact that, what has happened in this movement is on these lines is extremely powerful to me. And I think about October 13th and October 18th. Obviously, I'm involved there, right? So often I reflect back on what God has done, where I was, at these places in God's providence. Like the fact that I was there in Arkansas at all was actually a miracle, because I wasn't supposed to have my passport, right? So it was wrongly sent back to me. And so I was able to go. Heidi and I were able to go. And and then to be there on October 13th, measuring 391 and a half days to November 9th. And all of the things that came out of it, the understanding of July 18th and all of our experience, we can see that there is a purpose in it. When I see the sort of, and I'm going to use the word haphazard attacks against the message that have happened, and that is, I don't think people realized what they were doing initially. People didn't understand the connections. And part of that is just a lack of study, right? That is, I saw quite clearly that if Colin had been following our studies, he wouldn't have drawn the conclusions that he did on December 25th, 2021 and afterwards. And I do think that a big part of what happened in the movement also was the belief in conspiracy theories, where there's a type of reasoning that's employed in conspiracy theories that is not Miller's rules. And
there's something I came up with on an answer to conspiracy theories to my friends is, if you believe that, you'll believe anything. So that's the thing, about a conspiracy theory, like the mindset doubts truth in the end.
Yeah, because there are conspiracies, right? They exist.
Absolutely.
The conspiracy theory is
There's a lot of bad out there.
Yeah, it's an unprovable theory by its very nature. That is, there's no way you could ever confirm it because of the conspiracy. So an example of a conspiracy theory that none of you believe, I hope. This one guy who believes he's Jesus Christ, lives in Hawaii, believes that all of that Greek history, that there's all cut out, it was all invented by the Greeks. That Xerxes, Antarctic Xerxes, are actually the same person.
Sort of a revisionist historian. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So all of the documentation, like the source documents, these like the Elephantine papyri that were found that have all these dated documents, contracts, marriage contracts, different things that are double dated, that we can confirm the dates of Persian history. He just says they were manufactured as part of the deception. So any evidence you bring to show that he's wrong is all part of the conspiracy. So that's the problem with those types of conspiracies. That if you have evidence that it's wrong, well, that's part of the conspiracy. So it can never be proven. But there's a type of reasoning that goes along with that has infected Adventism in general, and it's infected both liberals and conservatives. We saw, Tess abandon so-called conspiracy theories to adopt leftist conspiracy theories, right? And some of the leftist conspiracy theories end up becoming right-wing conspiracy theories later on. Used to be left-wing people were anti-vaxxers, like the extreme left. And those ended up being adopted by the right. Lots of different things like that. So, but anyway, that's our study for today. So I thank everybody for participating, and we'll come back and try to see where we can go tomorrow. But I do think we learned a lot today. Okay, so let's close with prayer. Dear Father in heaven, we are grateful for the time that we have had here this morning, and the time we have in order to study again throughout this day. We pray that you can bring us together again to study your word, and we're thankful for the work that you do upon our hearts, both in the intellectual aspects of coming to your word and reasoning together, and also on the way that you touch our heart and that you draw us to you, that you reveal to us your love, and that you give us an assurance of faith that's both intellectual and emotional. I pray that you can be with each person, that you can watch over them, that you can help us to minister to those around us, that we can reveal your character. May you watch over our family and friends with your angels, and we lift them up in prayer. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.